Friends, so far I have given a brief introduction to the theme of the module. Now I am coming to different varieties of methodology which Indian philosophers apply. But for that, I would like to focus on Buddhist methodologies. But it is not exclusively for the Buddhists only. It is also useful for other systems of philosophy in India. Every human action to achieve some goal involves a plan of action, which is the initial act of rational thought. Every such plan during its execution requires a series of compatible methods which are collectively called methodology. It is a series of response to such questions as what, how, why and when. In every case, conceptual clarity is essential. Let us elaborate it further step by step. Number 1, selection of a problem, issue or purpose, which means there must be a desire to make an inquiry into a purpose, or at least one must conceive an idea about it, jigyasa, to know what it is. Number 2, to have right knowledge about it, samyak gyan, but one must know how to acquire it. Number 3, on this basis to see a meaning in it or to create a new meaning in it for a higher purpose, earth. Number 4, this meaning discloses a value, purusharth, mulya, which may be either worth pursuing, upadeya, or avoidable here, which answers why about the preference for the course of action. And number 5, practical execution in one's behavior, karma, keeping in view the opportune time, that is when, methodologically. The whole process involves a series of theoretical and practical methods. This is not the only way of looking at these steps. The same process can be explained in many other ways. Now, let us take an example of an object which appears as a snake in a dark street to me. My first natural response will be to run away in fear from the spot, and then I may decide not to go through that street, or I may decide to come back with a stick and torch to kill the snake so that it does not bite anybody. In my second cognition, under light, it may be the snake again, or it may turn out to be a rope, in which case it may be an illusion. Thus, in my first personal experience, the subsequent cognition has cancelled my original experience. Here comes the issue of truth and falsity. A snake is falsity and rope is truth. The matter may end there, but it can also be that if I become curious to know the reason as to why the same object appeared differently. In a simple analysis, my visual sense appears to be deceptive, but on reflective investigation, if I realize that it is not the nature of the object to appear as what it is not, rather it is my intellectual understanding and judgment which involve conceptual and linguistic acts and habits of structuring my knowledge and the object within mind. The whole blame shifts to the knower himself and other extraneous factors. This develops into a very big issue of sense-intellect relationship. In the Indian history of philosophy, as in its Western counterpart, various conflicting perspectives have developed without any consensus on any issue of metaphysical, epistemological or linguistic nature. Even then, philosophers do not run away from such problems, rather they engage themselves in them. Very often, they will go for meta-level analysis of such conflicting views. On this approach, we can discuss three Indian thinkers who make meta-level analysis to solve such conflicts. Firstly, Nagarjuna, in a skeptic mood, dialectically shows the emptiness of all views which have false ontological commitments. Secondly, Jainism offers their synthesis on the ground that each view is partially true, which means there is no absolute truth. Thirdly, Advaita Vedanta of Shankar treats this conflict as a result of relative truth claims and so rises to the higher level of truth, which is the absolute truth. Strangely, the philosophers do not ever stop with these solutions. All these efforts are not only intellectual exercises, but three different approaches to universalize the ethical values of compassion, nonviolence, and cosmic harmony, respectively. Again, if there is a goal to achieve in one's life, one has to be methodologically systematic in his approach. If one wants to pluck a mango fruit from a mango tree, one must be skilled in climbing the tree, pluck the desired mango, come down skillfully, systematically taste its juice out and prepare a drink. What I want to say is that there may be as many methods as there are areas of inquiry, such as natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, religion and spirituality. Researcher has to choose one right mode of inquiry, that is, he has to follow a system of right steps to arrive at the goal he has aimed at, which may be philological, a priori empirical, a priori synthetic, comparative or phenomenological, but in every case one has to start with the given and follow the principle of reasoning to be consistent and coherent in order to develop the main theme and accomplish successfully the investigation into the nature of truth, which may be absolute, relative, one, many, progressive, empirical, transcendental, spiritual and so on. It is to be noted here that there are multiple forms of rationality which differs from one mode of inquiry to another. Moreover, plurality of view, not to talk of things, is ubiquitous and this creates an unending dispute. Then there is plurality of attempts to resolve them. These attempts may be at empirical level as well as at meta level. Then again disputes. Thus, there is an ongoing process of disputes and resolutions which together shape an ever developing intellectual tradition. In this process, different methods also evolve in light of new problems and evidences. This is what happens in philosophical tradition as well. But above all, there are immediate practical concerns which of course require theoretical clarity, but relevant practical solutions. The parable of arrow narrated by the Buddha makes a strong message to avoid irrelevant and self-stultifying inquiry and focus on the immediate practical concerns. In this case, the victim himself is not bothered about his own welfare for the reason that he is obsessed with false social, cultural and religious priorities at his own cost. The Buddha suggests the cleansing of the mind of such conditioning factors of the sufferer and awakening him to take appropriate course of action to make the latter free from suffering. For the Buddha, the ultimate solution is the path of Dhamma. Note that the word Dhamma has various meanings such as quality, gun, cause or condition, hetu, non-substantiality, nisatta, discourse or preaching, deshna, and text, pariyati. Now, I am going to speak on the topic Buddhist canons and philosophy. It is a fact that the Buddha himself did not record his own discourses. They were compiled, categorized and systematized by his disciples over a long period in Pali language, that is the local dialect. Till date, these are considered to be the original and most authentic Buddhist canons, most of which are now critically edited and translated by a dedicated team of the Pali Text Society, London. With the passage of time, a new set of Buddhist canons in Sanskrit were also produced. Various commentaries, sub-commentaries were also written in order to elaborate and interpret the real intent of the Buddha's discourses as well as the independent writings of the Buddhist thinkers over centuries. After the Parinibbana of the Buddha, in this situation, it was not possible to identify the original text or meaning of the contents of these texts. However, a rich and diversified Buddhist literature came into existence along with the multiple schools of thought, namely Theravada, Sarvastivada, Vaibhashik, Sautrantik, Madhyamik and Yogachar Vijnanvad. Many of them were translated into various foreign languages like Sinhalese, Burmese, Thai, Tibetan, Chinese, etc. Now, if one is desirous of reading and understanding the meaning of the contents of a Buddhist text, for example, he must have its well edited version by a competent philologist whose primary task is to check and correct its grammatical and semantic structures with variants of reading wherever required in order to maintain the consistent flow of ideas and arguments. Now, I would like to discuss the next method, that is Buddhist hermeneutic principles. Following Normal's preceding observations, Kalupahana comments that the Buddha talks of the hermeneutic principles in the Majjhima Nikaya in a non-absolute sense, which denies the divine status of a holy scripture and emphasizes the changing character of word, language and meaning, which together form the ever-flowing conventional tradition. When it is said one should not strictly adhere to the dialect of a country, nor should one transgress ordinary parlance in deference to what is it said. What monk is strict adherence to the dialect of a country and what is a transgression of ordinary parlance. Here in monks, the same thing is recognized in different countries as pati, as patta, as vitha, as sarao, as dharop, as pona, as pisila, these being dialectical variants of the word bow. When they recognize it as such and such in different countries, a person utilizes this convention, obstinately clinging to it and adhering to it, saying, "This alone is true, all else is falsehood." Thus, monks, each strict adherence to the dialect of a country and transgression of ordinary parlance. And what monk is the strict non-adherence to the dialect of a country and the non-transgression of ordinary parlance. In this case, monks, the same thing is recognized in different countries as pati, as patta, as vitha, as sarav, as dharop, as pond, as pisil. Thus, they recognize it as such and such in different countries. These venerable ones utilize it for the purpose, and thus saying he utilizes it without grasping, and thus monks is strict non-adherence to the dialect of a country and non-transgression of recognized parlance. Now, the next method is methodological integration of discourses and discipline. A question raised by a reader as to how to decide what a particular view or discourse quoted by some monk or for that matter some Buddhist scholar in the name of the Buddha is genuine. It is a known fact that the Buddha never declared himself as an authority or possessing an absolute truth. He offered his own discourses to be critically examined and it found true. He asked the person to follow it. He sets 4 hermeneutic principles as the criteria of Dhamma, which are the principles of integration of awakening, discourses, moral actions and practice. The following passage from the Majjhima Nikaya elaborates them. Here, monks, if a monk were to say, I have heard such in the presence of the fortunate one, I have received such in the presence. This is the doctrine Dhamma, this is the discipline Vinaya, this is the message of the teacher, Sattusasana. Monks, the statement of that monk should neither be enthusiastically approved nor completely condemned. Without either enthusiastically approving or completely condemning and having carefully studied these words and signs, they should be integrated with the discourses, that is the sutta, and instantiated by the discipline Vinaya. However, when they are being integrated with the discourses and instantiated by the discipline, if they do not integrate with the discourses and are not instantiated by the discipline, on that occasion one should come to the conclusion, this indeed is not the word of the fortunate one, the worthy one, the perfectly enlightened one. Instead, it is wrongly obtained by this monk, and so should you, monks, reject it. However, when they are being integrated with the discourses and instantiated by the disciple, if they integrate with the discourses and are instantiated by the disciple, on that occasion one should come to the conclusion, this indeed is the word of the fortunate one, the worthy one, the perfectly enlightened one. It is well obtained by this monk. This monk is the first great indicator. The next method is the Buddha's methodical silence. The Buddha has been vocal in his discourses throughout his post-enlightenment period of 35 years. But the Chul Malum Ke Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya records an event on an occasion when the Buddha was asked 10 or 14 metaphysical questions. He maintained silence as a matter of strategy, although his silence was interpreted as agnosticism. These questions were of 4 types: three of which were asked in the format of 4 modes of expression, which is called tetralemma, Chatushkoti, whereas the last one was in 2 modes. This exhaustive categorization of all philosophic views showed their mutual conflicts and speculative nature. The Madhyamik, like Chandrakirti, through his Prasanga method, that is the method of reductio ad absurdum arguments, expose the emptiness, shunyata, nisvabhavata of all conceptual linguistic structure and their ontological metaphysical claims. It also applied the dependent arising method, which showed that every such view is nothing but a conceptual networking. These issues will be further elaborated later. However, the Madhyamik philosophy is the philosophy of silence, which is an attempt of silencing the mental proliferation, prapancha shunyata, essencelessness, nisvabhavata, penetrative insight into the nature of non-substantial fluxional reality, prajna, and active compassion, karuna. The latter acquires universality against the background of the former 3. Now, I am going to discuss miscellaneous methods used by the Buddha and the Buddhists. The first one is the general conceptual framework of Buddhism, which clarifies the nature and the type of the method. As discussed earlier, the Buddha's realization of the universal, natural and dynamic law of dependent arising, that is paticca samuppada or pratitya samutpada, which proved to be the master stroke for substantialism, Atmavad, and the foundation of Buddhism, whose principal aim is to address the issues of human suffering and find out its remedy. Another 2 foundational views of the Buddha are impermanence, that is anicca, anityata, and substantialism, anatta, anatmata, which pervasively cover all variety of phenomena, reality, existence, sentient and not sentient. Thus, an insentient pot or a sentient person is not only dependently arisen, that is an aggregate of multiple causes and conditions, but also ever changing and non-substantial or essenceless. This proves the unity of pot as false. Contrary to it, the substantialist Atmavad think that everything or phenomenon has a permanent substance essence, whose forms or qualities change, but its essence or substance or substratum, technically called atta in Pali, atma in Sanskrit, always remain unchanged. For example, the clay of a pot is substance, and likewise consciousness or soul is the essence of man. In this way, the Buddha's Trinity view of the principles of dependent arising, impermanence and non-substantiality applies to all empirical entities. It rules out the existence of any non-empirical transcendental reality like God, personal souls or substantial material things. Obviously, this Patisodgami orientation of the Buddha had to be controversial for all mutually competing substantialists who found common purpose to challenge the Buddha and the subsequent Buddhists from every possible angle and with every possible method. The most aggressive and dismissive of them was Shankar, who, for example, in the case of Madhyamik, declared that these Buddhists do not even deserve respect for being an opponent because they are thorough nihilists and deconstructionists. Even politically, the Buddhists have suffered badly from all quarters all over the world. Still, they have flourished unchecked. Today, it is one of the fastest growing philosophies, religions, and peace movements. However, the Buddha's original view became the root of every school of Buddhist thought. With the passage of time after the Buddha and also during his lifetime, lots of hermeneutic and heuristic difficulties arose from his internally conflicting discourses, which were delivered according to the nature of issues, context, semantic levels, and the levels of the understanding of his audience. A vast number of neologisms of terminology, doctrines, arguments, conceptual frameworks, and methodologies were innovated, created, and applied with the passage of the developments of Buddhism within and outside Indian subcontinent. But the Buddha's concern of eliminating the human suffering and achieving nirvana have always remained the main targets. The methodical journey of Buddhism can be described in brief as from passion, that is rag, lobh, dvesh, moh, to dispassion, that is arag, alobh, advesh, amoh, to compassion, karuna, and then to nirvana. From conditioned state to deconditioned state to fresh conditioned state in the Buddha's way. From ideological attachment, that is ditthira, and ideological intoxicant, ditthyaso, to view of practicing the Buddha Dhamma, Dhamma Ditti, view of self-interest, Atma Drishti, to self-other quality, Paratma Samta, altruism, and transference of merit to others, Parinam Mana. From a variety of emptiness, Shunyata, Dharma Shunyata, Swabhav Shunyata, Drishti Shunyata, Drishtopasham, Prapanchopasham, to fullness or excellence in virtues, Paramita, also Shunyata of Shunyata, to avoid it being misunderstood as a transcendental metaphysical entity. From conceptually fabricated nature, Parikalpit Swabhav, to dependently arising nature, Paratantra Swabhav, to consummate nature, Parinispanna Swabhav of the mind. Next point, from suffering, dukh, to happiness, sukh, from bondage to freedom, liberation. The next point is the impersonal nature of man. From the whole preceding discussion, it is clear that man is at the center of Buddha's enterprise. It is for man and by man. Obviously, like any other thing, man's nature and status are determined within the ambit of the trinity of dependent arising, impermanence, and non-substantiality. He is not better than any collection or heap of a set of 5 types of psychophysical aggregates, Panchaskandha, under 2 categories, name, that is Nam, under which come 4 aggregates, feeling, that is Vedana, perception, that is Sangya, disposition, that is Sanskar, and consciousness, Vigyan. And number 2, body, that is Roop. Each of these 5 is a dependently arisen series in itself, as the early Buddhism interprets his ontological nature and impersonal status. In this list, soul or self does not appear anywhere when one reflects on human person. As a consequence, man loses his ongoing identity as a person, that is, he becomes impersonal because he cannot maintain his substantial first person singular identity, although he does have minimal self. In this paradoxical situation, his transformation by the Buddha's formulae, self-effort, karmic agency, intention, fixing of responsibility and karmic result will all be impossible and meaningless if he lacks substantial foundation. In addition to these problems, the different interpretations of the view of impermanence by the early schools of Buddhism, that is Theravada, Sarvastivada and Sautrantic, led to conflicting theories of momentariness, Chadbhangavad, which ended in the Sautrantic view of discrete moments cut off from all sides, that is, a momentary entity is destroyed completely as soon as it comes into existence. Yatraiva utpatti tatraiva vinasha, that is taken from Abhidharmakosh Bhashya of Vasubandhu. Thus denying its origin from nowhere, abhutva bhavati, and end nowhere, bhutva cha vinashyati. 2. The strategy of the first two of the above three schools is to introduce a brief duration, sthiti, within the moment itself, whereas the logic of the third one culminates in the notion of discrete moments. But all the three finally succumb to some or other kind of substantialism or essentialism in the process of saving the continuity and the identity of the person from utter conceptual chaos, whereas the empirical and pragmatic truth is that the person very much exists and is active in the empirical world. However, the attempts to prove it momentary led to a counterintuitive position. Thus, the method of mereological reductionism adopted by Theravada, Vatsiputriya, Sammitya, Sarvastivadins and Sautrantikas not only failed but also earned disreputation from the subsequent Mahayanist Madhyamikas and the Yogachar Vijnanvadins in two different ways to restore the sanctity of the empirical person in consonance with the Buddha's framework. Now, let us discuss in brief the various Buddhist methods particularly, that is, the method of mereological reductionism. It is a form of analytical method to understand a spatio-temporal empirical individual entity like pot, chariot and human person, each of which is considered to be a combination of one whole and many parts. Conventionally, the two invariably go together and serve a pragmatic purpose of containing water in the case of pot. For example, when physically disintegrated, only atomic parts are left and no whole is seen. This means parts are real, but whole is merely notional. In the same way, a human person is reduced to 5 aggregates. This position goes against the externalist realists like Nyaya Vaisheshik, which treats whole, that is avayavin, as an organizing substantial principle of the parts, that is avayav. The two are inseparable as long as the pot exists. However, on the destruction of the pot, the two are separated, but they exist independently. In the similar manner, it treats the soul as the locus of various properties in human personality. These two opposite positions create a serious debate between anti-realism and realism, which goes a long way in the history of Indian philosophy. But this debate does not satisfactorily explain the empirical ontological status of the pot or human person. Both Pali and Sanskrit Abhidharma scholasticism complicated the matter beyond solution and it ended in arbitrarily lengthy enumeration and classification of the phenomena, both psychological and physical, in different numbers, and took their interpretations of impermanence, that is anyatata, to its logical culmination with different theories, which the Buddha had never taught and intended. Man is actually not only a psycho-physical combination, but also has moral, truth-seeking and desiring permanent happiness and immortality tendencies. In some sense, thus the Buddha's above mentioned three basic principles suffered a logical ruthlessness. But things changed in the evolution of Mahayana tradition. Now, I have the next topic, two truths method. Generally, the Buddha tried to remain confined to the empirical world, the abode of human beings and their field of action, apart from other beings, sentient and insentient, of course. Unlike modern Western philosophy, one special characteristic of doing philosophy by Indian thinkers, barring Charvak, is that they do not believe that conventional truth is the ultimate truth or realm of reality. They make the distinction between conventional and ultimate truth, which serves their spiritual purpose. For them, there are, broadly speaking, in Wittgensteinian terminology, there are two levels of meaning or truth: surface structure and deep structure. In this sense, surface structure is exposed to the sensory faculties and it is called the world of convention, whereas its underlying and hidden principle is called deep structure, which is transcendental but immanent in the conventional truth itself, is the ultimate truth. It is noteworthy that truth, whether epistemological or ontological, involves reality. This way of analysis or method is the Indian way of solving various complex philosophical issues, and it is man-centric in the sense that this or any other method of thinking is innovated by the man himself and for himself. Man is endowed with the nature's mysterious gift of subjectivity and preferences among many other such gifts. Ability to formulate a conceptual framework or worldview to understand himself, the cosmos and his mutual relationship with it is another such gift. That said, he innovates a method of two truths, conventional and ultimate, to solve many complex conceptual problems. This method or strategy has proved to be most effective both exegetically and pedagogically. The Buddha himself used the two truths method. In the subsequent development of Indian philosophy, two truths model and even three truth formulae are found, such as Niyarth and Nitarth and Parichhed Yard, Samutti Yard in the Nikayas. Dravya Sat, Pragyapti Sat in the Vasubandhus, Abhidharmakosh Bhasya, Sambriti Sat, Paramartha Sat in the Abhidharma and Nagarjuna, Sansar Nirvan in Nagarjuna, Swalakshan and Samanya Lakshan, Swabhav Arthavas in Dignag, Niyarth, Nitarth, Parikalpit, Paratantra, Parinishpanna in the Yogachar Vigyanvad, and three strategic forms of progressive Dharmachak Pravartan schema, declaring the third one the most developed in his Yogachar Vigyanvad. Paramarthik, Vyavaharik, Parikalpit in a non-Buddhist Shankar, and so on. Nyaya Vaisheshik and Charvak accept only one truth, that is the empirical truth. All of the above schools of thought or thinkers have their own conceptual frameworks and theory of truth, which have generated lots of conceptual conflicts among them. Now, I think we have quite a few methods before us and we have discussed, but this number is not exhaustive. Thank you very much, have nice time, and please go through these points to understand the next lecture. That will help you. This is my advice. Best wishes.